The pale winter dawn bled through the slit windows of Jon Snow's chambers, like a thin knife of gray, scraping over stone and straw, and the restless silhouette of Ghost at the door. Cold seeped up from the flagstones into Jon's bare feet, but he did not shiver. The frost felt almost cleansing, a truth too sharp to be denied. Outside, a muffled clamor drifted up the inner yard. Soldiers hauling timber, the rasp of steel on flint, the distant voice of Melisandre urging her helpers to hurry. By the hourglass, it was scarcely first light, yet Castle Black no longer kept watch by the turning of sun and moon, only by the tempo of Stannis Baratheon's will. And this morning, the king's will demanded fire. Jon tightened the wool cloak about his shoulders, brushing the black wool over the white-knuckled grip of longclaw Dada. It felt heavier than usual, as though every chain of his vows had been forged into the Valyrian steel. Ghost nuzzled his thigh, red eyes trained on him with wordless concern. Jon scratched the direwolf's ear and heard in the animal's low rumble the echo of his own misgivings. He had dreamed of flames last night. Flames licking a makeshift pyre, the smell of singed hair, the rasp of a song, half remembered from his childhood in Winterfell. Yet in that dream, a different fire burned behind Melisandre's ruby. A black fire, cold and hungry, devouring the face of Mance Rayder, until nothing human remained beneath the soot. He set his palm against the rough sill and gazed down into the yard. They had built the stake where the training butts once stood, a crude altar of spruce trunks cut from the haunted forest, now bound with iron hoops and splashed with pitch. At its center, a single upright post stabbed the morning air. Chains glimmered around it like serpents waking from hibernation. The smiths had worked through the night. The steam of their effort still hung in low banks above the frost-rimmed stones. Jon knew those chains. Donal Noy had forged them years ago to anchor the gates in storms. Now they would anchor a man in his final torment. A pang twisted in his chest, so sudden he pressed fingers to the cold mortar. He had stood on the wall and heard Mance Rayder's horn thrice blown. He had fought the wildlings in snow and blood. He had loosed the arrow that felled the Magnar of then. Yet when he looked upon Mance, he could not bring himself to see an enemy. He remembered a tent of beaten hides beneath a sky pulsing with aurora, the smell of hare stew, and the hiss of Ygritte's laughter. Mance had spoken then of songs and children, and the dream of a door thrown open. That dream had been burned away by winter's winds, but not the man who bore it. And now Stannis would burn him instead. Bootsteps scraped the stair outside. Jon turned as Ser Elizar Thorne appeared in the doorway, black cloak draped arrogant as a raven's wing. "Lord Commander," Thorne drawled, savoring the title as though it were sour wine he alone found sweet. "His Grace commands the watch's attendance. Melisandre will light the pyre at dawn exactly. Latecomers will be flogged. It would not do for you to miss the show." Jon's fingers burned upon the pommel of longclaw. "I am aware, Ser Elizar." "Good." Thorne's thin smile cut across the gloom. "You should know the king commends your diligence. One less wildling to foul the realm, eh?" Ghost's rumble rolled through the room. Thorne's eyes flicked to the direwolf, and he stepped back, cloak swishing. "Keep your beast leashed. His Grace tolerates monsters poorly." The door closed. Silence filled the stone chamber, thick as the smell of tallow. Jon exhaled slowly, counting heartbeats. His breath ghosted white. He could almost sense the wall itself listening, ice groaning in ancient protest. Swallowing, he knelt and pressed forehead to Ghost's. "I do not ask much of you," he whispered. "Only that you run when I bid it, and bite only the ones I point to." Ghost licked the scar on Jon's lip, warm tongue against numbskin. They rose together. In the yard, cold bit like a feral thing. Black brothers gathered in uneasy knots, their breath coiling skyward in twin serpents of mist. The Queen's men stood apart, golden crowns on red surcoats gleaming dully in the weak light, their swords recently honed. Jon's brothers eyed them with the resentment of crows confronted by lions. At the edges of the yard, wildlings huddled in shackles, survivors of Hardhome, of the great charge on the wall, of 100 small skirmishes fought on snowy fields. They watched the rising stake as condemned trees might watch the axe that felled them. Mance was brought forth last. The rattling of his chains rang clear across stone. 2 Baratheon guards pushed him, but the king beyond the wall walked with back unbowed, head high. His hair, grown silver as old hoarfrost, lifted in the breeze like threads of smoke. When he saw Jon, he paused. A flicker passed across his eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or the half-memory of that tent beneath Aurora. Then a guard shoved him onward, and the moment died. Jon felt the future narrowing, a trap of iron jaws ready to snap. He had tried every tongue he knew, pleading with Stannis, reasoning with Melisandre, bargaining with Maester Aemon's lingering authority. Nothing availed. The Red Woman claimed the Lord of Light had shown her a victory forged in sacrifice, and Stannis, desperate for men to march south against Bolton treachery, clung to those flames as though they were destiny itself. Mance to them was tinder. To Jon he was a man, flawed and proud, but a man who had once spared Jon's life beneath a weirwood's bleached arms. The horn blew once, twice. The yard fell quiet, save the brittle clack of pennants in the wind. Melisandre advanced, her scarlet robes streaming like living coals, ruby at her throat, pulsing with an inner heart. She held a torch whose flame burned yellow as any torch, yet in its core Jon glimpsed an unsettling blackness, a void that swallowed color. It cast no warmth, only an unsettling promise. "Mance Rayder," she called, voice carrying serene authority. "By the power of Aurora, the Lord of Light, you are offered mercy. Recant your false kingship, bend the knee to Stannis Baratheon, and be reborn in the flames." Mance's laugh was hoarse, the laugh of a man who has swallowed winter and found it bracing. "I have knelt to no man, Red Witch, nor shall I now. I've a wife and babe beyond your wall of ice. Let your God tell them why they'll never see me again. Then may your sacrifice illumine the true king's path." Melisandre lifted her torch. Jon's breath locked. Time slowed, each heartbeat a drum of war within his ears. Somewhere he heard Ghost growl, low and certain. Stannis sat on a makeshift throne of rough planks, face carved of granite. The Queen's men raised swords in salute. Brothers of the Watch shifted, some grimacing, some glancing aside in shame. He moved. There had been no command, no conscious decision, only the roaring sense that to remain still was to forfeit the last piece of himself he valued. Jon's boots scraped frost as he surged forward, ghosts bounding at his heels like living snow. Melisandre half-turned, ruby flaring. Jon shouted a wordless cry, and steel rang as Longclaw cleared its scabbard. The torch arced, dropped, sputtered across wet timber, but never reached the pitch. Ghost leapt, jaws closing on the torch's haft. Sparks scattered as the direwolf wrenched it away, snarling, eyes red as coals. Melisandre recoiled, sleeve afire for an instant before the cold wind snuffed it. In the same breath Jon crossed the yard, blade flashing, moon pale. The 2 guards at Mance's side faltered, stunned by the speed of it. One fell with blood blooming on his thigh, the other swung his spear too late. Jon battered it aside, shattered the wooden haft with a twist of Valyrian steel, and drove pommel to temple. The guard sagged. Chains clanked. Jon hacked at the cuffs, sparks skittering off iron, then caught Mance under one arm. "Can you run?" "Run." Mance's smile was a specter of his old mirth. "Lad, I can fly." They bolted. Shouts erupted. Queen's men yelling for order, brothers of the Watch crying out without knowing whom to aid. Somewhere Stannis roared, "Seize them!" Arrows hissed overhead, dunking into the post. Ghost wove between legs, slashing hamstrings, sowing panic. Jon felt the old rhythm take him. Sword a living current in his hand, breath timed to the dance of flesh and steel. He cut a path toward the tunnel arch carved in the outer wall, an access seldom used now, half buried in drift. Ed had left it unbarred, as planned. Snow blasted their faces as they cleared the yard. The alarm bells boomed behind, lonely as distant thunder. Jon and Mance plunged into the tunnel's mouth, feet skidding on packed ice. Darkness swallowed them but for dull light filtering through cracks. Ghost flitted ahead, a white phantom. The passage wound downward. Far behind came the clatter of pursuit. Iron on stone, the barked oaths of soldiers unused to subterranean battle. Jon's lungs burned. He guided Mance over a fallen beam, through a low arch where stalactites of ice hung like daggers. A gust swept through, extinguishing the lone lantern left as guide. They ran blind for a stretch, following Ghost's echoing paws until a faint glow materialized. The eastern Sally Gate, breath fogging around torchless sconces. Outside, dawn had ripened to full morning. Snowfields stretched unmarred toward the tree line, the haunted forest looming dark and vast. Jon paused only to slam the gate's inner bar, splintering the mechanisms so the pursuers would need axes. Then they ran, leaving the wall's shadow behind. Wind whipped Mance's frayed cloak, chains still jangling about his wrists. They gained the first pines and wove among trunks ghosted with rime. Jon, led by instincts honed on ranging. Avoid open glades, angle downslope to mask footprints, double back along rocky creeks. Soon the shouts faded, swallowed by wind and distance. Hours later they crouched beneath a granite overhang, the last embers of a covert fire glowing beneath snow-caked brush. Jon poured melted snow into a dented kettle, offering the stale warmth to Mance. The former king's hands shook as he drank, but his eyes sparkled with fierce life. I owed you a debt from that night you walked into my camp wearing black. Seems I'll be forever in it. Jon managed a weary smile. Call us even when I return you to your people. Mance's brow furrowed. They are your people too, whether you admit it or no. North or south, we bleed the same. Nah. Ghost circled, ears pricked. Jon's smile faded. South of the wall, a horn might be blowing. One blast, two, or perhaps the dread third. He could not know. Duty warred with memory, vows with compassion. Somewhere within the confusion he felt the presence of his father's voice. A man's honor cannot live only in his name. It must breathe in his deeds. Yet Lord Eddard Stark had never been forced to choose between two worlds, quite so torn apart. Snow thickened. They pressed on, the forest swallowing them in creaks and sighs. By dusk they neared an abandoned crofter's village. 3 sagging huts laced by half-fallen palings. Smoke curled weakly from one chimney. Jon signaled Mance to wait and crept forward. Inside, a lone wildling woman crouched by a peat fire. Infant at her breast, a stone knife resting on her knee. Her eyes widened at his arrival, but he lifted empty palms. No harm, he whispered. We need rest. We carry news of Mance Rayder. At the name, she crossed herself with surprised reverence. Minutes later, Mance ducked under the lintel. Gasps filled the hut as the woman recognized him. She named herself Branwen of the Wells, and offered rough bread and marrow broth. Word spread quick as Arctic hares, while Jon stood watch beneath waning moon. Shapes gathered along the palings. Shaggy men in patchwork furs, spearwives with plaited hair, children clutching dogs the size of goats. To each Mance spoke softly, and every face lit as though a star had fallen into their midst. Within 2 days, they had a following 20 strong, ragged yet resolute. Mance, weak from exposure, yielded the little authority he had to Jon's judgment on when to break camp, what trails to take, how to ration stores. You've worn the black long enough to read the land like scripture, he confessed one night as they crouched over a rabbit stew. Your brothers called you Crow. I call you Frosthawk, silent, swift, seeing far. Jon huffed steam. It was your dream to lead them south. Mine to guard the realms of men. Now I lead you north again, hunted by both crowns. Mance stirred the pot, pale eyes reflecting fire. Dreams change. The land teaches us her own psalms, lad. He paused, shoulders trembling in a fit of suppressed coughs. When I am gone, someone must sing them. Jon said nothing, but in the hush he heard wind keen through the rafters like strings of a broken harp. Outside, Ghost patrolled the drifts, leaving no prints in powder. They traveled east, skirting the milkwater frozen thick enough to bear mammoth bones. Every league brought more fugitives to their ragtag trail. A band of thens under a scarred youth called Alf. 3 giants grieving for fallen kin. Torment giant Spain himself, hair ice white and laughter rumbling low despite sorrow. Torment crushed Jon in a hug that cracked ribs. Knew you'd grow into a trickster, he boomed. Burning's too ugly an end for a man of song. We'll toast this night till the wall melts. Yet even laughter could not thaw the dread that followed them. Blue shadows stalked the corners of Jon's dreams, figures crowned in hoarfrost, eyes burning cold fire. Once, at dusk, they found a circle of horses, heads severed, haunches stiff in macabre worship of some unseen altar. Another time they crossed tracks like shards of sapphire, sign of the dead who would not lie still. Rumor traveled faster than hoofbeats. Hard home had fallen. Corpses walked. A storm of death advanced from the lands of always winter, and every heart it touched grew brittle with fear. They made council upon a cliff overlooking the icy flats, where the wind raked snow into ghost waves. Fires dotted the encampment behind. Dozens by now, a meager reflection of the once great host that had stood before the wall. Mance, wrapped in bearskin, addressed the gathered elders with voice roughened by cold. We crossed south for life. South answered with steel and stake. Now the night comes upon us from the north. We cannot outrun it. We must stand. Tormund thumped the haft of his axe in agreement. Others muttered assent, yet looked to Mance for orders he had not strength to give. The illness eating his lungs chewed each breath. He turned to Jon, eyes bright above hollow cheeks. You've lived among crows and free folk alike. You know their fears. Speak for me, Jon Snow. Jon's throat closed. He faced the ring of chieftains, women with knives of obsidian, men draped in wolf hides, giant sons of the frozen earth. All waited. The wall will not shelter us, he said at length. Its gates are barred. Stannis will see us as rebels, my brothers as deserters. But winter cares nothing for titles. If the dead march, they will breach the wall or freeze us where we stand. We need fire, numbers, order. We need every spear, every bow, every song that keeps courage alive. Napind. A murmur rose, some in gratitude, some in doubt. One then spat. Words are wind. Who leads? A crow raised under lords, or a king who coughs his last? Jon opened his mouth, but Mance lifted a trembling hand. He stood, swayed, caught himself on Jon's shoulder. The crow is right. I led you to these snows, but my road ends soon. My bones whisper it. He coughed crimson flecks into the white. A king must walk. I can barely crawl. Yet see him, bastard though he be. Half wolf, half crow, he risked everything to pull me from the pyre. His fingers tightened on Jon. I say name him Winter's king, until the wall opens of its own accord, or the snow swallows us whole. Gasps rippled. Jon felt as though he stood upon thin ice, the river roaring cold beneath. I swore the watch's vows, he began. Tormund barked a laugh. And I swore 100 oaths to 100 women. Oaths bend when the wind howls. He planted his axe. Crow or no, you've more spine than Stannis and Melisandre together. I'll follow. And you when? Others echoed. The tall spearwife called Thea of the Frost Driver. The scarred then despite himself. Even one of the giants, voice booming like breaking glaciers. Yet not all. A hunched elder named Wool shook his gray mane. He wears steel forged south. His blood answers to southern kings. He answers only to his heart, Mance rasped. Jon closed his eyes, seeking the quiet place beyond doubt. Images slid before him, Robb crowned in a tent reeking of mud and lilies. Ygritte falling in his arms, whispering they should have stayed in the cave. Maester Aemon's frail hand upon his, telling him love is the death of duty. But duty to what? The watched vows forbade lands and children and crowns, not the rescue of the living from the dead. He opened his eyes. Call me what you will, he said. I will not abandon you. A hush settled, so profound one could hear the hiss of falling snow. Then a child's voice piped, small and clear, "King Jon." Laughter bubbled uncertainly. Then cheers sparked here and there, stoked by Tormund's thunderous guffaw. Branwen knelt first, her infant cradled in crook of arm. Alpha then followed, then Thea, then the giant lowering to one knee like a mountain bending. The air seemed to shift, heavy with something older than titles. A primal need for shelter, for a light upon the hill. Jon's cheeks burned though the wind bit fierce. He made no gesture, spoke no grand decree. Instead, he knelt beside Mance as the older man coughed, ragged breaths. "I'll stand with them," Jon whispered. Mance's hand closed on his wrist, surprisingly strong. "Then stand tall. The wall's shadow reaches long, but the night's is longer still. Be their sword, and their song." Snow began to fall in earnest, thick flakes tumbling like pale feathers from a torn pillow of cloud. Fires guttered against the gusts. Somewhere distant, a horn sounded. Not the wall's signal, but a mournful call blown by watchers posted on northern ridges. 3 notes. The night is dark and full of terrors. Jon rose, pulling his cloak tight, ghost materializing at his side. Around him, eyes regarded him with dawning hope and creeping dread, as though both were necessary to face the coming storm. He felt neither hope nor dread, only resolve, cold and pure as the wind off the frozen shore. Behind lay the wall, high and hard and uncompromising, a monument to vows. Before lay the true enemy, inexorable and ancient. Between them stood a man once named Bastard, now named King by those with nothing left to give but belief. Jon Snow took a single step into the drifting dark, and behind him, the free folk followed, torches sputtering like newborn stars in the swallowing night. Okay. Wind scoured the ridge all night, a ceaseless whisper through ragged pines and broken stones, yet Jon Snow scarcely slept. He sat beneath a jutting shelf of ice, cloak drawn tight, watching embers fade in the shallow pit between his feet. Each spark sank into powder like a star dying in some fathomless sky. Each sigh of wind sounded like a distant horn. Ghost lay close, fur bristling whenever the gale moaned down the ravine, but his red eyes stayed half-lidded, trusting that Jon would wake him when danger came. Around the camp, the free folk slumbered in clusters, families pressed together under patched furs, spearwives curled around wolfhounds for warmth, lone survivors who clung to nothing but sleep's indifferent mercy. Somewhere beyond, the giant's deep snoring rolled across drifts like muted thunder. Jon had taken the last watch himself, claiming he was not yet weary, though his bones told another tale. 3 days of flight and frost-bitten vigilance had etched grooves beneath his eyes, but a deeper unease carved at him still, the knowledge that every path led toward peril, whether south to the wall or north to shadows that walked. And now another burden weighed upon him. No iron crown, no carved bone circlet, only the fragile hope of a people who had named him their king. King. The word felt alien on his tongue, like a blade he dared not sheath for fear it might cut him in the drawing. He had not sought the title, it had sought him, rising from ashes of fear and despair, sparked by Mance's failing breath. Mance lay now in the healer's tent, a lean hide leaned to where Branwen brewed willow bark and pine pitch to ease his lungs. His fever climbed each night, and Jon doubted the man would see the next moonrise. When Mance slipped, who would guide these scattered thousands? Jon? He had commanded a few hundred black brothers. Not this wild tapestry of clans and creeds, some half-tamed by grief, others still bristling at the memory of steel and stake. He could hear their murmurs when they thought him out of earshot. Will the crow betray us when the wall looms? Will he trade us for mercy from his brothers? And worse, can a man of half measures lead us through full darkness? He felt the pull of those doubts like tide on a drowning man. Yet he could not surrender to them, just as he could not surrender to Stannis or Melisandre. The fire would take them all in the end if they waited for southern mercy. No, the storm must be faced, blades unsheathed, hearts steeled. Still, heart and steel alone did not feed children, nor shelter wanderers from gnawing frost. They needed a refuge, a place to gather stores, to forge spearheads and arrows, to wait out winter's deepest breath. And somewhere, if the gods were merciful, they needed allies. Ghost stirred, ears twitching. He lifted his white head, muzzle aimed toward the eastern ravine. Jon laid a hand to the direwolf's neck, feeling tension ripple beneath pelt. Then he heard it too. Soft crunch of snow under measured steps, the whisper of fabric brushed by spruce needles. He rose quietly, longclaw already weighted in his grip, and stepped beyond the glow of the dying fire. A figure emerged from the tree line, small, moving with deliberate caution. Moonlight lit a face he knew. Val, sister to Dalla, Mance's widowed queen. She wore a cloak of silver fox, hair bound in a plait that glimmered pale gold. Across her back lay a bundle of yew wood arrows fletched with raven feathers. In her hand, a short hornbow. At Jon's silent challenge, she raised a palm. "He grows worse," she said softly, eyes reflecting starlight. "His fever parches him. He calls for water in the tongue of the first men." "No." Jon lowered his sword. "There is ice enough all around. It does not reach his throat." She glanced past him to the glow of campfires. "Will you come? He asks for you as well." Jon nodded. Ghost fell into silent stride beside him as they returned between sleeping forms. The healer's tent sat at the slope's base, its roof sagging under ice crust. Inside, warmth kissed Jon's cheeks, heat from a peat fire mixed with tang of pine resin. Mance lay on a bed of spruce boughs, breathing in shallow wheezes. Branwen sat beside him, cloth pressed to his lips. When Mance's eyes opened, they settled on Jon with lucid urgency. Branwen withdrew. Val knelt opposite. Mance's fingers fluttered. Jon clasped them, surprised at the frailty he'd once seen strong enough to draw a warbow. "You'll march soon," Mance rasped. "The watches speak." "March where?" Jon whispered. "The Raven Scout, but bring no maps. We walk blind between sharp teeth." "To Hardhome," Mance breathed. The name shivered in the tent, as though wind had found a crack. The ships, wood for fire, fish for bellies, walls of stone older than kings. "Menum?" Jon frowned. "Hardhome is fallen. Dead roam those ruins." "Not all dead," Mance said, cough lancing his words. "Whispers come on gull wings. Folk trapped, cold, starving. Thousands, they say. If we leave them, the enemy swells. If we free them, the North's fires gain a single hearth." His eyelids fluttered. "I would go myself, but lungs betray me." "And the sea," Jon murmured. Hardhome perched on a cliff above the shivering sea, far east along the north coast. Reaching it required skirting many leagues of haunted forest and shoreline. Terrain stalked by both whites and white walkers. Val's hand touched Jon's sleeve. "He is right. I led 3 runners east and south to sniff what trails we could. At Grey Cliffs we found corpses, fresh, if any corpse can be, but also a boy who had escaped Hardhome. He wore chains on his wrists, Southron make. He claims a tribe called Night's Children holds the harbor, with iron and false sacrifice. He fled when the dead took the Low City. Others may still live behind timber palisades. Yet, they will not last the winter." Her eyes burned with mute fury. "If we do nothing, they rise as whites and march on us." Jon released a slow breath. Hardhome was a promise and a threat, a refuge if they seized it, a nightmare if they ignored it. Yet leading this half-starved host across a frozen wilderness to a beleaguered ruin would test every grain of their resolve. Could he? Ghost pressed flank against his leg, reminding Jon of steadfast companionship. "How many can march?" Jon asked. "Tormund rallies 2,000 fit for spears," Val replied. "Giants add strength, though slow. Another 1,000 old and young would follow if we find sleds. And food. We hunt. Fish the lakes. It will not be enough." Jon thought of winter stores at Castle Black. Cellars brimmed with salt beef, barrels of black bread gone hard as brick, wheels of cheese coated in wax. Stores meant for the watch alone, yet guarded by thorn and royal men. Attacking the wall was folly. But what of Sable Hall, Woodswatch by the pool, even Eastwatch? Garrison numbers were thin, and Eastwatch's stores might yet remain after Stannis left. Eastwatch also kept boats. The only sizable ship was the Storm Crow, a battered cog, but longboats aplenty. If they could seize even a handful, they could bear their weakest by sea to Hardhome. Risk stacked upon risk like stones on a cairn. Yet each day they lingered beneath the open sky, gave the enemy time to find them. Jon bowed his head. "We leave at dawn's first gray," he decided. "Send word to Tormund, quietly. No one from Stannis' camp must hear." Val touched her brow in brief salute. "The free folk will rise with the storm," she said. She slipped from the tent, silent as falling ash. Alone with Mance, Jon knelt. "You asked for me. Was it only to speak of Hardhome?" Mance's gaze sharpened through fever haze. "No." His fingers tightened painfully. "I dream of a harp." His chest rattled. "I kept it hidden, south of the wall, deep in the Frostfangs. A cave of blue crystal. I meant it as gift for Dalla when we crossed and knelt before your brother Robb. A harp of dragon bone, strings of silver, old as the first kings. Find it, Jon. If I die, give it to my son. Let him learn her songs." Jon swallowed. "I will find it." Mance's grip slackened. He closed his eyes, breath shallowing to a thin whistle. Jon remained, listening to that fragile sound, until Branwen returned to dab his brow with snowmelt. Then he rose and left. Dawn arrived, shrouded in leaden cloud. Jon stood upon the crest overlooking the encampment. Fires guttered in pits etched across the snowfield, casting dull glow on makeshift tents. Tormund thundered orders, voice booming as he herded raiders into rough columns. Giants ambled to and fro, loading furs onto mammoth-hide travois. Children cried for mothers lost in the press. Spearwives sang low to soothe them. Above all, ravens circled. Too many for mere carrion birds. Jon felt their black eyes track his movement. When he lifted a hand, one descended. A mottled creature with one white streak on its wing. Unlike Maester Aemon's disciplined flock, these ravens rode the open sky. Feral but clever. Jon teed a scrap of hide to its leg, bearing the sigil he had scratched with charcoal. A direwolf within a ring of flames. The mark he had chosen not for any lineage but for dual worlds he bridged. The bird flapped toward the northeast, the direction of Eastwatch. By noon the camp had become a march. Snow churned beneath boots and paws, sleds creaked. Giants waded through drifts waist-deep to humans. Tormund strode beside Jon at the column's head, frost bearding his red mane. "Never seen so many souls look to me like I'm some nursemaid," he grumbled. Jon managed a tight smile. "I thought you loved a crowd. A crowd in the shield hall with horns of mead and a woman on each knee, a crowd with hungry bellies and blue shadows at their heels. Different song." "Emzal. Yes, she." They trudged east, weaving between frozen ponds. Val scouted ahead with a band of archers. The Night's Watch hunts once had ranged here, so she knew which glens offered usable trails. The sky remained a dull pewter, trapping them in an endless twilight that bruised morale. Jon forced the pace, but allowed frequent halts for the weak. At each stop, he dispatched small parties to harvest deadfall for fires or set snares for hare. Few returned with game. Even rabbits sensed the coming storm and hid deep. The second night, Jon summoned a council in a shallow dell where spruce blocked wind. Tormund, Val, Alf of Then, Thea of the Frost River, and one the giant crouched near the glow of resin torches. Branwen attended, bearing news. Mance hung between life and death, slipping in and out of delirium. Jon bowed his head. The others watched, uneasy. Mance had long been their compass star. Now they looked to Jon as though fearing the night sky might fail. "We reach Eastwatch in 4 days at this pace," Jon began. "I know its stones. Sir Borkus commands since Cotter Pike sailed south with Stannis. 200 Black Brothers remain, many wounded or raw recruits. They will not yield lightly, yet they are not zealots like Thorn. "What of the king's seal?" Tormund asked. "You wear none." "I have letters from Stannis commissioning me to treat with wildlings," Jon said, producing a leather bundle. "They still bear his signature. If Borkus believes I act by royal command, he may open the gates. Once inside, we seize provisions and ships." Alf spat. "If he does not, then deceit becomes steel," Val answered, eyes cold. "We take what we need." Wun rumbled assent. Jon felt the weight of command settle like an anvil on his shoulders. "Violence within those walls risks burning every bridge to the south," he warned. "But starvation leaves no bridge to burn." Thea leaned forward, blade glinting in torchlight. "Better to live as thieves than die as honest prey." A grim agreement passed round the circle. Jon breathed deep. "We move at dusk tomorrow, hugging the hills to avoid watch fires." "Val, pick one runner, take my letter ahead. Gauge their mood. If Sir Borkus signals welcome, you return. If arrows are loosed, we attack." Val nodded. "I will choose the Fleetfoot boy. He outran 5 hounds at Icemark." Meeting dismissed, they dispersed to ready their bands. Jon lingered, watching sparks spiral into the cold night. Ghost whined beside him. "I know," Jon murmured, knuckles buried in white pelt. "This path reeks of blood." He rubbed his scarred lip, remembering Melisandre's eyes when he had knocked the torch aside. Glimmering not with anger but with anticipation, as if his defiance fueled some darker prophecy. Had she foreseen this flight? She spoke often of kings forged in fire. But what of kings forged in frost, carved by the bite of night, not flame? He shoved the thought away. Dreams of flames and rubies could not chart the tundra. Morning dawned dull pewter again, snow drifting like ash. The march slogged on. By midday, runners returned with news. A fresh track of whites crossing their intended path. Jon ordered a detour south toward a range of jagged spines locals, called the Ice Fangs. The detour added half a day, but offered higher ground, less likely to host the dead. Near dusk, as the sun flirted with horizon, Val and Fleetfoot vanished ahead. The column made camp in a shallow bowl surrounded by cliff walls. Fires were forbidden. Smoke could betray them, so they huddled beneath quilts of snow and fur. Jon walked the perimeter, checking sentries, looping back to Branwen's tent. She greeted him with silence, eyes red. Mance's fever had broken into the cold beyond. He lay motionless, lips parted as if still singing to a forgotten harp. Jon knelt at his side. The tent smelled of pine and the faint metallic tinge of death. He folded Mance's hands over his chest, took a pale leather string from Branwen, and tied it around the dead man's wrist, securing the scrap of hide that bore his dire wolf sigil. "Carry it to Dusklands," Jon whispered, voice snagging. "Let the old songs guide you." Outside, wind keened like 1,000 lost mothers. Tormund waited, face grave. When Jon emerged, the giant Rayder inclined his head. "He was my friend," Tormund said. "I will build a cairn tonight, stones enough to stand 1,000 winters." Jon placed a hand on the Raider's shoulder. "Let it be so. But keep the stones low, no torches. The dead watch for such lights." Then, that night, silence ruled, broken only by the scrape of rocks piled over Mance's shrouded body. On each stone, someone carved a line, a rune, a memory. Branwen set upon the cairn the wooden whistle Mance had once carved for his son. Val pressed her forehead to the stones, eyes hard as quartz. Jon said no words. He had none left. Near midnight, Fleetfoot returned alone, breath ragged, cheeks raw. Jon and Val met him beyond the camp's edge. He sank to one knee. "Eastwatch," he wheezed. "Its gates barred. No torches atop the towers. Dead in the courtyard. I smelled rot through the cracks." Then, Jon's heart thumped like a smith's hammer. "How many?" "Dozens, I saw, maybe more. Some wore black cloaks, some queen's men sigils, all unmoving until the raven's cry woke them. Then blue eyes opened. I fled." Val's voice was ice. "The castle has fallen." Jon stared east through the darkness, as though he could pierce stone and grief. Eastwatch fallen meant no boats, no stores, no ready escape by sea. Worse, it meant the dead had a doorway through the wall's very flank. Tormund joined them. Lantern shuddered. His expression hardened as Fleetfoot repeated his tale. "We were boxed," he said. "Wall to the south, dead to the east. If they hold Eastwatch, they hold the coast. Then we retake it," Jon said. Val's gaze flickered. "With what rams? What ladders?" Tormund grinned a wolfish grin. "Giants." Dawn spilled like diluted milk across an ashen sky. Jon stood on a slope facing Eastwatch's distant silhouette. 3 towers clawing upward, their bases veiled by drifting snow. Between camp and castle stretched a plain of crusted ice dotted with stunted pines. Giants readied themselves nearby. One and his kin bound slabs of icy rock with braided rope, hefting them like children's toys. Human warriors gathered crude shields, sled boards, mammoth ribs, anything to stop a claw or arrow. Jon divided the host. 200 archers under Val would circle wide to the north, silent as frost, ready to loose arrows at any wights that poured from breaches. Tormund would lead the central spearhead. 500 raiders charging behind giants. Alf's thens held reserve to plug gaps. Jon himself would take a small detachment along the seaward path, scaling the rocks to approach the Sally port he once patrolled as a brother. Ghost would guide him. As they prepared, Branwen stepped close, a bundle in arms. "For Mance's will," she said, pressing a thin leather pack into Jon's hands. Inside lay the tattered black cloak he had worn as Lord Commander, mended with white bear fur at collar. Branwen's needlework had woven a single red thread down its spine. "Wear it," she urged. "Let the men see Watch and free folk sewn together." Jon donned the cloak. Wind snapped its edges behind him like wings. He drew longclaw, its pommel wolf gleaming silver. Around him, eyes lifted. Free folk thens, spearwives, giants. Some touched fingers to lips. Others pounded spear to shield. He had no horns to sound the charge, only his voice. "Steel yourself," he called across the gathering hush. "We fight not for crowns or keeps. We fight for the living. Hold the line. Strike true. Bury fear in frozen earth." A roar rose, not practiced, not uniform but fierce. Giants bellowed low. Children clung to sleds, wide-eyed. Jon turned to Val. She knocked an arrow, face painted in ash. They nodded once, and she slid into the trees. Tormund stamped his axe. "Let's split some skulls, Crow King." Jon clasped the raider's forearm. "Stay alive. No promises." Tormund winked and lumbered off to rally spears. Snow begun to fall. Heavy flakes, muffling the world to a hush. Jon signaled. His unit advanced, hugging rocky ledges above a frozen creek that wound toward Eastwatch's east wall where waves once lapped. Ghost bounded ahead, tail a white streak. As they neared, Jon discerned details. The gatehouse door hung ajar, half splintered. A portcullis lay crumpled like tin. Above, one tower's top floor gaped from fire-blackened timbers. Ice clung to arrow slits like tear tracks. He raised a hand. "Halt." The dead lined the parapets, motionless in drifting snow. Men and women in black, Queen's men with flaming hearts, even a horse whose head dangled over the merlon. Their blue eyes glowed dim behind veils of frost. They watched, but did not stir, as though obeying some unheard command to conserve menace. From the plain rose a battle cry, Tormund's charge. Giants thundered across ice, hurling boulders that crashed into walls, cracking stone. Spears glinted, axes whirled. The dead on parapets turned, groaning as awareness ignited. Arrows blackened the air, Val's archers loosing from shadow lines, shafts thudding to undead flesh. Blue-eyed soldiers toppled but rose again unless heads shattered. Jon's heart pounded. Time to move. He led his detachment to the Sally port, where tides had eroded the cliff. A rusted iron door stood half open. Chain snapped. 2 wights lurched within. Brothers he recognized by tatters of cloak. He granted them swift mercy, longclaw separating bone from neck. Ghost finished a third, crimson spray staining snow. They slipped inside. Corridors reeked of mold and death. Ice-glazed stone like varnish. Jon guided them downward toward storage vaults. Supplies first, then barricades. They moved room to room, cutting down whites that staggered from shadows. At a cross passage, Jon spotted a flicker of orange, a torch's remnant wedged in a niche. Someone alive had been here recently. A cry echoed from above. Not undead, but human. A woman's scream taut with terror. Jon broke into a run up a stairwell, his men at heel. They burst into daylight on the battlements opposite the gatehouse. Snowflakes swirled around two figures, Sir Borkus clad in half armor, face bloodied, sword shattered. Opposite him, a wight of gaunt stature wearing rusted maester's chains. Pate, Eastwatch's healer, now risen. Borkus swung a broken haft in desperation. Jon shouted, sprinting. Ghost streaked by, crashing into the wight. Borkus collapsed. Jon finished the wight, steel biting through throat and spine. Blue light flickered out. Borkus stared up, breath puffing. "Snow," he rasped. "Gods take you. You're dead." "Not today," Jon replied, hauling the man upright. "How many living remain?" "Few." Borkus coughed wetly. "We held until the gate fell 2 nights past. Some fled to the cellars. Others joined them." His eyes tracked ghosts. "They eclipsed the fires with cold. We had no dragon glass. No torches strong enough. They walked through flame, snow." Jon sheathed longclaw. "Listen. Free folk fight for the castle now. My people, if you'll have us. Show us the hearth stores. We'll arm with fire arrows and hold walls until dawn." "Then Sehor." Borkus stared, half madness in gaze. "Crows and wildlings side by side. The wall has cracked indeed." But he spat blood, then nodded. "Below the buttery, barrels of oil." Jon handed him to a watchman and turned to survey the plain. Below, battle raged. Giants smashed gates, dead swarmed like ants, thence carved corridors with axes, yet more dead rose. Val's archers harried flanks, but reinforcements shambled from every dark hollow. Jon lifted a horn he had found and blew a single long note, the signal for reserve. Alf surged forward with his thens. Inside, Jon's detachment split. Half to fetch oil, half to bolster towers. Ghost bounded after fleeing whites, hamstringing them for spearmen's thrusts. Smoke drifted from burning barricades. Somewhere distant, thunder boomed. No cloud in sky. The ground shook. Jon saw Wun Wun at the gate, shoulder braced against oak while undead poured around his legs. The giant roared, tearing a wight in two, hurling halves aside. Yet they clung like snow ticks. Jon zeiced a cask of lamp oil from Borkus's men. Together, they tipped it from the loft, soaking dead below. A torch followed. Flame erupted, hungry and bright, swallowing blue eyes in orange bloom. Steam hissed as snow melted to slush. Raiders cheered. The tide turned. By twilight, the gatehouse stood cleared, courtyard strewn with smoldering corpses. Giants pushed rubble to seal breaches. Val's archers combed halls for stragglers. Jon climbed to the north tower where crows perched on broken stone. He surveyed the shore. Ice floes jostled against cliff. Among them bobbed 3 longships, their masts snapped. But nearer the dock, a squat merchant cog rested, hull intact, though sails shredded. The Storm Crow, left behind by Eastwatch's harbor master. He descended. Inside the mess hall, survivors huddled. Free folk and black brothers mingling in wary truce. Fires crackled, stew bubbled. Branwen tended wounds. Jon strode to the trestle where Borkus sat, arm bandaged. Murmurs ceased as he spoke. "The castle is ours," he announced. "The dead will return, but tonight we rest, we eat, we honor the fallen. At dawn we repair the docks and ready the Storm Crow. Children, elders, and wounded will sail east toward Hardhome under Branwen's care. The rest of us will march along the cliffs to guard their landing." "Named her Bainshao." A murmur, uncertain. Tormund banged his axe. "You heard him, Crow King speaks true." Borkus raised a cup. "To Jon Snow," he said hoarsely. Lord Commander no more, but Commander still. Jon searched their faces. Some trust, some suspicion, but life-warmed eyes that had nearly surrendered to death. He lifted his own cup, hemlock mead saved from freeze. We live while the dead do not. That is our victory tonight. Eat. Die. Drink. Tomorrow the long road. That a coin. Cups clinked. Voices rose in a rough hymn that once had echoed under Winterfell's rafters. The north wind blows, but we shall stand. Jon's heart ached at the memory of home. Yet he did not look south. Instead, he saw Val kneel beside a child handing him a bread crust. Saw a black brother share stew with a then. Small signs, flickering as fragile as candlelight. Yet to a man starved of hope they blazed. Later, alone on the parapet, Jon watched Aurora spill ribbons of green across the sky. Ghost crouched near, ears twitching at distant howls that drifted over ice. He touched the stone, still warm from earlier flame. Eastwatch had been forged by hands of crow, yet reclaimed by hands of many, giant, spearwife, raider, crow alike. A lesson lay in that union. Only together could they defy the night. Footsteps approached. Val joined him, cloak swirling. Mance would have smiled, she said. He would have sung, Jon replied. Silence lingered until he asked, "Will they follow me to Hardhome?" They follow already. Some still mutter, but muttering feeds no bellies. You give them bread, they will give you swords. Nate. Tell me. He eyed the storm crow bobbing below. Bread is thin as ice at world's edge. Then we bake hope. She smiled, thin and fierce. Fear turns men to stone. Hope melts snow. He chuckled, surprised by the sound. You speak as though you'll be at my side on those cliffs. Where else? Giantsbane is loud, Alf is cruel, Borkus is broken. And you? She tapped his chest. Need a voice who can whisper truth when others shout falsehood. Dalla told me once. A king who walks alone leaves only one set of prints. Easy to follow for hunter and foe. Jon bowed his head. Then walk beside me. She nodded, hair gilded by auroral light. Until the night ends. Far off, the wall loomed a pale scar in darkness. He saw no torches on its heights. Perhaps Thorn watched, waiting. He thought of Sam, somewhere in Old Town with books that spoke of dragonglass and hidden fires. Of Sansa and Arya, faces blurred by time. Of Bran beyond the wall chasing ravens. He felt the threads of many fates weaving a tapestry none could see whole. Yet within its knots shimmered one truth. Dawn must someday break anew, and he would carve a path toward it, sword in hand, crownless yet crowned by resolve. He turned from the wall, facing the night-bound sea, and breathed the sharp salt air, until it filled him with purpose. Then he descended to share watch with spearmen on the gatehouse roof. The aurora danced above and below. The fires of the living burned steady against the encroaching dark. Oh, ha! The dawn came slate blue and windless, a hush that felt less like mercy than the soft inhale before a scream. Jon Snow stood on Eastwatch's battered dock, watching the storm crow rock gently against her moorings. The old cog looked a sorry thing, rigging frayed, foremast splintered where icefall had struck. But her hull remained sound, tar thick in every seam. She smelled of salt and stale barley, and in her dark hold lay hope for 300 souls who could not march another mile. Around him, the dock bustled with subdued industry. Giants lifted casks of oats as if they weighed no more than cups. Raiders patched the sail with strips of mammoth hide. Black brothers hammered bronze nails into a hastily repaired gangplank. Children watched wide-eyed, clutching rag bundles, until Branwen shepherded them aboard, speaking barley-soft words of comfort. The wounded followed, borne on litters or limping under arm, wrapped in spare cloaks. Each time someone crossed the plank, Jon felt his heart lighten by a hair's breadth. One more life pried from winter's jaws. Yet every weight lifted there pressed heavier elsewhere. Farther up the quay, Val spoke with Borkus and Tormund, voices low and urgent. The plan they debated grew riskier with each breath. Two groups marching along the cliff road. One on the heights, one hugging the shoreline, meeting the storm crow at Hardhome's broken pier. Windless today, aye, but northern gales could shred even new sails, and the dead prowled both land and sea. Worse, Melisandre's ruby visions might already bear Stannis eastward on black-winged suspicion. If the king's men cut them down along the shore, the work of Eastwatch would unravel like rotten rope. Jon stroked Ghost's ruff, watching cloud ghosts swirl far out over the shivering sea. Somewhere beyond that pale rim, iron-born reavers hunted warm-blooded prizes. Ibonese whalers stalked leviathans deeper than memory. And in half-remembered lands, dragons wheeled above blood-red dunes. Yet none of that mattered if this ragged host perished against a cliff face. When the last children vanished below decks, Branwen approached, wiping hands on a threadbare kerchief. "Hold is near full," she reported. "Water casks brimming, oats enough for 4 days if stretched. But the foremast worries me. A stiff weather-side gust could snap it clean." "Manu." "We'll hug the coast," Jon said. "Shelter beneath the cliffs." She nodded, though worry etched lines about her eyes. "I will pray to every god, with an ear for wood and wave. Pray loud." He glanced toward the group on the quay. "I need a word with Val." Branwen squeezed his glove, then descended, cloak snapping behind. Jon crossed planks slick with rhymed salt. Tormund's booming laugh broke off mid-rumble as Jon neared. "The Crow King arrives," the Rayder announced, planting his axe head down with a thunk. "Come to scold us for planning feats too grand." "Only to steer the course," Jon answered. He gestured at the parchment Val held. "How many routes?" "3, Val said, handing it over. "Cliff road above, goat trail midway, shoal path below. All narrow. If the dead hold the upper, we slip beneath. If they rise from sea, we climb." Jon traced the jagged ink lines. The goat trail worried him. One rock slide could trap them between heights and surf. Yet splitting forces risked isolation. He measured the faces before him. Val steady as winter sun. Tormund fierce but cunning. Borkus weary yet resolved. "We send scouts first," Jon decided. 3 runners each trail, day ahead. If they do not return, we assume worst and shift course. Borkus coughed. "We have few runners sound of wind. Most heal yet." The boy Fleetfoot collapsed after his turn. "I'll go," Tormund offered with a grin. "These legs still carry the tales of 5 wives." Val rolled her eyes. "And 3 gouty toes. You stay with the main host." She turned to Jon. "I will lead the cliff road. My bow speaks quick." "Then Tormund see." Jon hesitated, but she met his gaze, daring him to refuse. At last he nodded. "Take 2 ravens. If you reach the ridge overlooking the Nag's Head Rock, loose 1 west toward us, 1 east to Hardhome. Short message, clear for heights. If trouble, do not linger." She clasped his forearm. "And if I send no birds, then we carve another path." He released her, trying to smile. "Just don't make us think up a new name for that road." Val's folly doesn't sound heroic. It sounds true. She winked, then strode to gather gear. Tormund hoisted his axe, gaze following her. "That one could rule clans with a stare. If she sets her eye on you, Crow, make sure you're wearing steel beneath your furs. Though none forged by man can save you." Jon smothered a snort. "I'll heed your wisdom." "See you do." Tormund clapped his shoulder, nearly buckling his knees. "Now, I've a saying for this day. A ship is only as strong as the song sung while launching. Giants!" He whirled, bellowing. "Raise your voices." From the pier's end, 1 and 2 other giants began a low, thrumming chant. Words more felt than heard, rising like distant drums. Raiders took it up, then archers, smiths, healers, even brothers of the watch. The dock vibrated underfoot as the song rolled across frozen surf. Jon closed his eyes, letting the guttural cadence settle in his chest. It lacked melody but held a depth. A reminder that beneath warring clans and scattered tongues, they shared a single heartbeat. The simple will to live. When the last note faded, the storm crow slipped free. Oars plunked into water, guided by a pair of giants seated amidships. Oars shaped from felled masts, wider than 2 men's shoulders. Wind still slept, so muscle must suffice. The cog drifted forward, slow yet determined. On deck, Branwen and a gaggle of older spearwives waved farewell cloths. Children leaned over rail pointing at the giants. Wounded lay blanketed under the forecastle awning. Jon kept eyes on the sail until it vanished into a morning mist swirling like breath from unseen lungs. Only then did he allow the smile to fall away. The climb ahead would demand every drop of strength. He gathered the remaining captains, Tormund, Borkus, Thea, Alf, and issued orders. Break camp by high sun. Column of 2 abreast on the goat trail. Until dusk. Torches dark, shields muffle. Giants and mammoths would not attempt the goat trail. They would march along the upper ridge where ground broadened. If the dead blocked one host, the other would flank. They set out an hour later. The goat trail hugged the cliff face, sometimes narrowing to a ledge scarcely a handspan wider than a man's boots. Waves churned far below, and every shriek of gulls sounded like white shouts. Children were few. The youngest had sailed, but those who remained clung to rope lines Jon had strung between cliff pins, eyes round as moons. Spearwives carried infants lashed inside cloaks. Warriors bore packs stuffed not with loot but oats, flints, pots. Jon walked near the front, ghost silent at heel. Longclaw weighed against his hip like a reminder of someone else's legend, yet its cool pommel grounded him. He could not see the giants on the heights but sometimes felt their footfalls thrumming through stone. The sea remained calm, blessing them with briny hush instead of gale song. Still, he scanned every notch in the cliff for pale eyes. By mid-afternoon the trail broadened into a shelf cluttered with broken boulders. Here they paused, baking flatbread on shield backs warmed by braziers. Jon climbed a spur for vantage. To his relief, the storm crow's mass peaked beyond a sea ridge half a league ahead, steadily overtaking them. Sails now caught a feeble breeze, patched hide bulging. He allowed himself a moment's pride. First step of many. Dusk crept fast. Dot. They made camp in a shallow cove, beneath an overhang of basalt spires. Fires remained forbidden. Val's signal had not yet come, so they huddled beneath stone, sharing cold oatcakes and frost-stiff cheese. Giant silhouettes moved above like roaming hill spirits. Jon sat with Tormund and Borkus over a map scratched in coal on slate. "We are here," Jon marked. "Nag's Head Rock lies another 3 leagues east. If Val's raven comes by dawn, we press on. If not, we storm the heights," Tormund finished, eyes bright. Borkus frowned. "If the dead hold the ridge, charging uphill is spilling blood into a puddle. Then we spill cold blood," Tormund growled. Jon lifted a hand. "Arguments wait. Rest first." He took first watch atop a pillar at cove mouth. Stars pricked the sky, faint behind gauzy cloud. Ghost sat beside him, nose lifting to salt breeze. Jon's thoughts wandered to Sansa's shy smile, Benjen's laughter at Winterfell's yard, Sam slamming book covers in excitement. He wondered whether Maester Aemon still breathed warm air south, whether Melisandre plotted red flames, whether Stannis banners yet flapped somewhere beneath the Dreadfort's men. Distance turned fates into rumors. A flutter interrupted his reverie. He turned. A raven swooped onto the pillar, wings beating hushed. White streak on wing, Val's mark. Jon untied the strip of hide from its leg. "Clear for heights," it read. "Road safe. Dead unseen. Rock songs only." Relief slackened his shoulders. Yet the phrase, "rock songs only," unsettled him. It was the code for signs of something old in the stones, not merely birds. Carvings or glyphs that the free folk believed belonged to the giants' forgotten gods, or worse, the children of the forest. Did Val sense watchers older than whites? He penned a reply, "Marching dawn," and tied it on, sending the raven west to Tormund's giants' patrol. Then he descended. At gray light, they broke camp. Word spread swift. Ridge clear. Spirits lifted. Feet quickened. The goat trail widened into a pass between towering shale fins. Mid-morning they spotted Val's party waiting at Nag's head, silhouettes sharp against sky like carved gargoyles. Jon quickened his pace. Val met him at the pass mouth, bow slung, hair whipping. "All quiet," she reported. "But see." She led him to a slab half buried in scree. Weathered spirals etched its face, arcing inward like twin whirlpools. Amid them a single glyph, leaf-shaped, edged in tiny ridges. Jon traced it with glove. "Children," he murmured. "Or those who walked with them," Val said. "Their songs haunt these cliffs." Jon scanned the ridgeline. No living shape moved. Still, the hairs at his nape rose. "We move quick," he said, "before singers wake." 3 more leagues and Hardhome's cliff appeared, jagged profile like a broken tooth biting sea mist. Smoke haze lingered above, though no breeze carried scent. The storm crow rounded a headland below, starting to furl patched sail. On mast top a banner fluttered, a crude direwolf drawn in soot on sailcloth. Jon's chest tightened. They halted at a bowl overlooking Hardhome's harbor. What once had been a thriving camp of cabins and longhouses now sprawled, charred and hollow. Sections of palisade still stood, but gates sagged open. Boats littered shore, some half afloat, others beached like dead leviathans. Above, a plateau jutted where a stone hall perched. Ancient seafarers' fortress turned wildling council hall. Smoke drifted from a break in its roof. Jon gathered captains. "We approach in 3 waves," he said. "Archers line the ridges to cover. Giants breach the palisade gap if closed. I will lead 30 through the harbor to signal Branwen in." "What of the dead?" Borkus asked. Jon scanned the ruins. "If they are here, they hide for now. The smell of smoke speaks of living foes, Knight's children tribe or slavers." His lip curled. Rumors had long swirled of wretched men trading flesh even north of the wall. Torment spat. "Knight's children bathe in devil's milk, they say. Eat hearts to see in dark. I'll split their bellies to check. Demoniprimars." "Abdi." Steel rasped from scabbards. Jon raised a hand for silence, then motioned forward. They descended goat paths into the valley. As they drew near, the palisade breach resolved into a shattered gatehouse, burned timbers, broken chains. Within, no sentry stirred. Jon gestured to archers, arrows nocked, bows bent. He slipped through ash-strewn mud. Ghost padded ahead, ears flat. The outer settlement lay silent. Longhouses collapsed, yards choked with driftwood and snow. Prints marked the mud. Booted men, bare feet, cloven hooves. Jon frowned. He found a corpse beneath broken beams, a man, skin gray, throat torn, but eyes brown, not blue. Fresh kill, perhaps 2 nights old. Ghost sniffed, hackles rising. A shriek pierced the hush. Jon sprinted toward it, longclaw flashing. He rounded a hut corner into a square where 7 figures writhed. Half were ragged wildlings, shackles on wrists. The other half men in black leathers bearing torches dulled by daylight. One captive lay gutted, innards seeming. Another shrieked as a captor pressed hot iron to her cheek. Jon didn't think. He hurled himself forward, blade clearing air. First slaver fell without cry. Skull split. Ghost lunged for a second, jaws crushing trachea. The rest spun. Their eyes gleamed with something like delight, even facing sudden death. One licked lips, smearing blood. "Free them," Jon snarled. The slaver laughed. "Freedom tastes like fear." He slashed his captive's throat, sending arterial spray, then charged Jon. Jon parried, disengaged, thrust through belly. The man grinned with entrails spilling, as if pain pleased him. Only when Ghost leapt onto shoulders, tearing ear and more, did he fall. The remaining 2 fled toward the stone hall. Jon cut shackles, pressed cloth to the wounded woman's neck. "Archers," he roared. "Loose." Arrows hissed from ridge. One slaver collapsed, shaft through thigh. The other reached hall doors, vanished inside. Jon signaled. and his 30 spilled into the square. The captives, 15 at least, sobbed thanks. They spoke of dozens more held in the hall's cellar, forced to mine black stone beneath cliffs. Their captors worshipped shadows in the caves, they said, feeding them blood to keep the dead at bay. Jon's stomach twisted. He dispatched Borkus with archers to escort freed to palisade, while he and Tormund stormed the hall. Giants would flank, toppling walls if needed. They crossed the courtyard. The stone hall rose grim. Slate roof caved. Doors hung half open. Jon advanced first. Inside, the smell of rot and mire collided. Torches burned smokeless green along walls. In the center, a pit yawned. Natural shaft descending into black. Ropes coiled over pulleys anchored to beams. Crates of strange rock, obsidian, lay stacked, veins shimmering with iridescent motes. From shadow stepped a tall woman clad in ragged robes dyed with midnight dye. Her face was placid, eyes black as night without stars. She carried no blade, only a staff topped by a shard of glassy stone. "Another king," she said, voice like wind through graves. "We have served many." Jon leveled longclaw. "Release your prisoners. They serve greater purpose." She gestured to pits. "The night rises. Blood and stone keep it at bay. We send offerings, and the shadows spare us." Her lips curved. "You would break the pact?" "I serve the living," Jon hissed. "Then descend," she murmured, "and see those you serve." She tapped staff. Green flame flared. Shapes stirred around pit. Men with blades of obsidian glass, skin gray-hued, veins blackened. Their eyes glowed faint sapphire. Not whites, yet not living. Tormund spat. Bloodless pups. They charged. Jon met the first guardian with slash and riposte. Flesh split, but instead of red, black ichor oozed. The creature fought silently, even as arms severed. Another lunged. Jon ducked, stabbed upward through jaw. Tormund decapitated a third, roaring. Yet the guardians fought heedless of wounds, as if strings animated limbs. Giants roared outside. Walls trembled. The robed woman retreated toward pit, chanting in guttural tongue. The pit glowed blue. Something climbed. Skeletal hands slick with frost. "Break the shaft," Jon shouted. Tormund shouldered a beam, splintering poly housing. Ropes snapped, crates toppled, burying 2 guardians. Jon flung torch into spilled tar. Flame whooshed, igniting. Smoke billowed, choking. The clawed hands retreated from fire. The robed woman shrieked abortive words, then vanished into swirling black smoke. Guardians faltered, as if strings cut, collapsing. Jon coughed, eyes watering. "Out!" They staggered into court. Giants had breached far wall. Hunters dragged slavers into sunlight. The hall behind belched smoke, then erupted. Obsidian crates shattering in blast of sapphire sparks. Shards rained like stinging hail, some embedding in snow, some dissolving to ash. Silence followed, broken only by panting. Hardhome was theirs, but a dreadful question. What covenant had those slavers forged? What ancient power hungered beneath cliffs? They found the cellar entrance behind rubble, tunnels cut into basalt, glittering with obsidian veins. Freed prisoners huddled near crates of ore shaped crudely into arrowheads and spear tips. Some recognized Jon, bowing though chains clinked. Dragonglass, Jon realized. The city of legend had coughed up its old lungstones. Slavers had forced miners to carve weapons for some dark host. Perhaps even the others feared dragonglass, so they demanded tribute to keep it hidden? Or perhaps the slavers bargained with the Night King himself. He halted speculation. First, secure the living. He ordered all tunnels sealed with rock and tar. Palisade repaired. Lookouts posted on cliff path. Fires blazed in longhouse hearths, for first time in moons. Brenwyn's Stormcrow docked as dusk fell, children squealing at sight of new refuge. Columns of smoke curled from stone chimneys. Laughter rang jagged but real. That night, They feasted on seal stew and flatbread. Jon sat at end of trestle, flanked by Tormund and Val, giants near hearth, singing basso lullabies. He listened more than spoke, letting the host draw breath after weeks of flight. For a moment he allowed himself satisfaction. One spark of flame on shore of darkness. After tables cleared, Val beckoned him to cliff edge where waves glowed phosphorescent. Stars wheeled slowly above. She handed him a shard of obsidian shaped like blade of leaf. Forged by slaves who never lived to wield it, she said. Jon weighed it. Purple flecks shimmered inside. We'll honor them by felling those who took their freedom. She faced sea. My scouts found carvings deeper in tunnels. Spirals matching ridge glyphs. Whispers say, the night's children serve shadows older than North, older than giants. Some believe they once were children themselves, twisted by grief. And Jon recalled, robed woman's eyes, black void. If they serve the night, they will return. Val laid hand on his. So will we, with fire and ice both, if need be. Footsteps on gravel. Branwen approached, cloak flapping. Mance breathes no more. She murmured. We laid cairn by ridge, as you asked. She held out a small bundle. A child's carved whistle cracked. The wind took his last song. Jon accepted it, felt the woods chill. Then we sing new ones. He tucked it inside jerkin. Tomorrow we shape council. Stock counts, watch rosters, work teams to mine dragonglass, but only by volunteers. And after dig? Tormund asked, arriving with mug of goat milk mead. Digging's fine, aye, but blades don't swing themselves. Jon gazed toward north horizon where faint glow danced. No aurora tonight, but flicker of pale flame. It might be reflection of moon on snow, or something else. We fortify first, he said. Then we ride. Val frowned. Ride where? South, Jon whispered. To the wall's gatehouses. We arm the watch, every brother and queen's man. If we hold together, we hold the darkness. If not, he pictured Winterfell's hearth. King's Landing's ransom, Dragonstow's torches. If not, no realm survives to crown victors. They stood in hush, broken by distant gull cry. Wind picked up at last. Sliding ice-cold fingers across cliff. Jon breathed deep. Salt and iron mingled, the smell of morning and renewal. Somewhere below, waves shattered against rock, unyielding yet forever changing the shore. He felt akin, carved by endless assault, but reshaped into something stronger, sharper. Come, he said. Dawn waits. They turned toward Hall's warming glow, 3 shadows stretching long behind. Days became rhythms of labor. Dawn drums giants to quarry. Noon bells call archers to butts. Dusk horns summon patrols. Dragonglass edged arrowheads and spear tips. Obsidian dust blackened faces of children who played at war among crates. Jon established council. Borkus over forge and wall repairs, Thea supervising fisheries, Branwen tending infirmary, Alf drilling spear lines, Val captain of scouts. Tormund remained Jon's hammer, solving disputes with laughter or threat, whichever wrought quicker peace. Every dawn Jon walked the perimeter, palisade replaced by triple-tier stakes, watchtowers crowned with cauldrons of oil. He inspected mines sealed, but vented for future digging. He climbed plateau to study sea. Some days calm, others clawed by whitecaps. No sails yet appeared, but gulls multiplied, feeding on fish near shore. Sign that waters still teemed. Ghost never left his side, though at night the direwolf often lingered on headland, staring north, sometimes howling low. Jon sensed a restlessness in the wolf, a tug he too felt under his breastbone, as if unseen forces drew threads in distant frost. Once, woken by howl, he climbed tower and glimpsed faint blue flares far across ice plain, marching torches of unnatural hue. He ordered redoubled night watches. Weeks into fortification, a raven arrived from Eastwatch. Borkus's old maester had survived cellar collapse, and now wrote of Stannis marching north again. Banners tattered, but numbers bolstered by northern mountain clans answering call. Worse, Melisandre's fires burned day and night, and rumor said she dreamed of a king in ice, not fire. Jon read the letter thrice under torch. Stannis' march meant conflict, either alliance or blood. He could not risk Stannis attacking Hardhome to claim dragonglass and wildling spears. Or, worse, torching the settlement if Melisandre declared them cursed. He sent ravens to Castle Black, requesting parley. None returned. Then one early morning, Val burst into council chamber, cloak drenched. "Fleet of sails," she gasped. "Black masts, from direction of Skagos. 30 at least." "Nemnitin." Jon summoned horns. Armories distributed obsidian-tipped arrows. Giants formed shield wall at dock, while children fled to cliff caves. Stormcrow slipped into Inner Cove, ready to sail as last bastion. From headland Jon watched sails approach through fog, black indeed, but bearing no kraken, no stag. Painted on each prow, a skull crowned with driftwood antlers. Torment spat. "Dit." Knights, children, survivors. But as bows parted mist, Jon saw figures at rails, ragged wildlings, many shackled. Behind them, robed slavers brandished whips. A drum boomed, deep, unnatural. "They bring living tribute," Val murmured in horror. Jon's gout clenched. Crimson filtered through his vision. Memory of Ygritte's screams at battle below the wall, of chained giants in King's Road parade. "Loosen arrows," he ordered quietly. First volley hissed, a black rain. Slaver helms cracked. Drummers slumped. Ships veered, colliding. Chaos erupted. Shouts. Screams. Splash of bodies. Freed captives leapt overboard, swimming for shore. Giants waded into surf, scooping them to safety. One slaver vessel caught fire. Tar barrels ignited by chance arrow. Flames devoured rigging, but 3 largest ships pressed on, ramming shallows. Planks slammed down, disgorging armored warriors with black stone blades. Their eyes were not sapphire, but smoldering violet. They moved in eerie silence, using signs. Jon met them with shield line of thens. Obsidian cracked wood, but dragonglass arrowheads split arm plates. The silent warriors fought with uncanny grace, dodging, flipping, never uttering pain. One slit a then's windpipe, then spun beneath Jon's parry, nearly gutting him. Ghost intervened, jaws crushing shin. Jon's riposte took the head. It rolled, expression still serene. Battle raged along beach. Giants hurled burning logs, smashing hulls. Waves lapped crimson foam. At last, the silent ones fell, either by blade or flame. The survivors scattered, pursued by spearwives to cliff shadows. When final bodies stilled, Jon surveyed carnage. Dozens of freed captives wept on sand. Wildlings and watchmen bled side by side. Giants pulled broken masts to shore for firewood. Among the dead lay a robed figure, the woman from Hall. Her face now cracked like fired clay, black eyes empty. Val found a scroll sealed with wax shaped like spiral. Inside, glyphs etched in ash. Brenwyn deciphered some. "The pact broken," she translated haltingly. "The night will claim what is owed." Jon closed his fist around scroll. "Let them come," he growled. "We'll pay in dragonglass." That night, they burned slaver ships for light, casting blaze upon sea like dawn risen early. Smoke drifted skyward, beacon visible for leagues. Jon knew it might guide Stannis, or the others. Days blurred into repair and training. Dragonglass blades balanced poorly, but cut white flesh like cheese. Borkus's smithy repurposed stormcrow nails into arrowheads, melting down rusted anchors for tangs. Spearwives practiced volleys. Giants hammered shield walls by stomping logs. Then winter roared. A blizzard swept from the frost fangs, burying palisade under dunes of snow taller than giants. For 3 days, sun vanished. Sky, a white void. Fires dwindled. Stores thinned. Yet within Longhall, Jon rallied spirits with tales, stark myths, free folk ballads, even Night's Watch laments. He discovered a knack for weaving them. Voice steady though weariness gnawed. When storm broke, world lay sculpted anew, sharp and glittering. But scouts returned with dire news. Ice River had surged across the plain, splitting trail to wall. Stannis' host now, camped only 2 days south. Banners half buried yet growing. Worse, King in Ice, Night King, marched from north, his armies bending course between Stannis and Hardhome, as if to trap both. Jon convened war council beneath shattered dome of old fortress. Tormund thumped fist on table. We fight both. Better to drink nightshade. Borkus argued seeking parley with Stannis. Present dragonglass, ally. Val feared Melisandre's flames would deem them heretics. Alf wished to flee by sea, sail west to Skagos, where caves might hide them. Giants rumbled that bridges of ice cannot be outrun. Jon listened, gaze fixed on chalkboard where forces arrayed. Hardhome's 2,000 spears, 500 archers, 6 giants, Stannis rumored 4,020 knights, the Night King's countless horde. Numbers bleak. He rose. We must forge alliance, he declared. Stannis needs men, we need legitimacy. We ride at dawn with 100 honor guard, bearing dragonglass arrows as gift. Melisandre will see truth. Only united stand chance. Nanso war. Tormund snorted, but nodded. I'll ride. Val stepped forward. I ride too. My eyes catch lies quick. Borkus volunteered. Thea as Archer's captain. One insisted on walking, strapping siege tree trunk strapped to back. At dawn, they set out over ice plain. Cold stabbed like glass shards, wind keening. They bore a white banner of truce, a direwolf stitched within red sunburst to honor both lineages. Ghost loped ahead, scouting. 2 leagues out, banners of fiery heart peered on ridge. Knights rode forth. Jon halted, signaled peace. A lone rider advanced, Sir Godry Faring, the Greenbeard. Though beard now icicle stiff, his gaze flicked to giants then to Val. The king will see your parley, he announced warily. But only you, Snow. Your wildling host stays 20 paces. Jon dismounted. Tormund grumbled but relented. Ghost stayed. Sir Godry escorted Jon to ridge where Stannis' pavilion stood, blue and tattered. Guards glared at direwolf but parted. Inside, Stannis hunched over table of driftwood markers, face gaunt, eyes fever bright. At his side, Melisandre burned a small brazier. Flames green tinged. Light danced in ruby. Lord Snow, Stannis greeted, voice rasp, "Dotty. Long miles twixt us." Jon bowed. "Your grace." Melisandre's gaze lingered on him like flames lick. "Still, you walk the path of dark and light." Jon laid bundle of dragonglass bolts on table. "Your grace, this may turn darkness. We forge them for watch and north, to arm your men also." Stannis studied shafts. "Obsidian." "Dragonglass," Jon confirmed. "Whites fell at Hardhome by dozens. Even white walkers, legends say, shatter to it." Stannis' fist closed. "Then we arm every man." Melisandre's smile flickered. "And every sacrifice." Jon stiffened. "No men burnt at stake. Living stand shoulder to shoulder, else dead kindle their own pyres." Stannis' jaw worked. "You stand before outlaw crown, yet speak as equal." "I stand as chosen of free folk, king beyond the wall now. But crown matters not. Enemy comes." Jon pointed north. "Night King marches between us. Alone we die." Stannis' eyes narrowed, weight of decision falling like frost. At length he nodded. "We march together. Your giants anchor right, my knights left, watch the center." He extended gauntlet. "Swear it, and we stand." Jon clasped wrist. "Sworn." Melisandre's ruby flared, casting red gleam across her smile. She whispered to flames, and smoke spiraled into shape of direwolf crowned by antlers, howling at burning sun. For a moment, Jon thought he saw another shape behind. Shadow twin with eyes of blue. But smoke dispersed. They rode back, banners twining in wind. Stag and direwolf, fiery heart and obsidian spear. Tormund roared approval. Val's shoulders eased. That night Stannis camped near Hardhome's plain, urging hosts. Black brothers reunited with fellows, free folk-eyed knights. Jon and Stannis addressed joint levies by torchlight, speak of dragonglass, vow of living. Shock and hope mingled. Then horns sounded 3 blasts. Night. Entire horizon lit by blue aurora that bled downward until it touched earth. From glow emerged wall of figures. Wights in tattered mail, giants undead, pale bears, spiders tall as halls. Atop Ice Stallion rode Night King, crown of frost, spear of crystal. Silence fell across Alliance. Jon felt hearts quail then steel. He raised longclaw high, dawn-forged steel gleaming in torch. Voice carried, "We are the fire they fear. Loose." Dragonglass arrows streaked. First rank of wights collapsed like wheat to scythe. Giants hurled flaming logs. Knights charged, hooves pounding. Free folk screamed battle songs. Night met fire, ice met iron. Jon carved through fleshless maidens, lunged at white spear. Ghost tore throats. Wun wrestled undead mammoth, snapping spine. Stannis slew white after white, banners rallying. But Night King advanced untouched, frost forming where he stepped. He cast spear. Crystal missile shattered Borkus' shield, impaling chest. Jon roared, sprinted. The world shrank to blue eyes and silence. He met the Night King at breach between lines. Frost knifed air around creature. Jon swung. Crystal sword parried, sparks of ice and fire. Pain seared his palm. He struck again, longclaw ringing. Night King's expression stone. Lightning crack of giants tearing tree. Tormund tackled white giants. Val loosed arrow of dragonglass. It missed Night King by inch, embedding in shoulder of undead knight who burst into shards. Night King thrust. Jon barely sidestepped, felt ice slice jerkin. He riposted upward. Valyrian steel met crystal. A shriek like dying comet. Blade chipped. Then a horn sounded far off, deep, ancient. From cliffs poured shapes. Children of the forest, small yet fierce, hurling obsidian grenades that exploded in flame and vine. Spirals glowed on brows. They chanted, weaving green fire. Night King faltered. Jon pressed. Flames erupted at creature's feet. Crystal spear melted at tip. The being hissed, not voice, but wind through graves. Seeing opening, Jon dove, plunging longclaw into Night King's chest. Steel bit, lodged. Blue eyes widened. For heartbeat nothing. Then cracks spidered across icy flesh. Blue light pulsed, then blew outward in blast of frost. Jon flung back, snow swirling. When vision cleared, armor fragments littered ground, frost steaming. Where Night King stood now lay jagged shard of dark crystal, pulsing before fading to black. Whites froze mid-stride, collapsing like puppets cut. Silence thundered. Only crackle of green flames. Men stared, disbelieving. Jon rose, bleeding, side swim. Val ran to him, catching before he fell. Tormund yelled triumph. Stannis stared. Sword lowered, eyes reflecting dying blue embers. Children of forest approached, leaf eyes bright. One bowed to Jon. "Knife of dawn," she said in old tongue. "Balance restored. For now." He tried to reply, but darkness claimed him. He woke days later in Hardhome's infirmary, ribs bound, hand wrapped. Branwen sat dozing. When she noticed, tears spilled. Val entered, relief plain. Ghost by bed, muzzle bandaged. "How long?" Jon croaked. 3 days, Val answered. "You tore open when spear nicked lung. We stuffed wound with moss and hope." He inhaled shallow pain. "Night King." Shattered, Tormund boomed entering. He lifted a pendant. Crystal shard mounted in bronze. "Our smiths made from what's left. Good luck charm. Unless it curses you, who knows?" Jon accepted with weak smile. "Stannis. South with half his force," Val said. "He means to break Bolton now. Left Eastwatch to us, promised supplies and leaving Melisandre here. Says her God wills her to guard wall. Jon grimaced. But Hardhome stands, Tormund declared. Dragon glass for days, children of forest teaching us shape songs, giants drunk on goat milk mead. Outside window he could hear laughter, hammers, gulls. Fire smoke rose, but not of pyres. Smith forges, cook fires, hearths. Life. Jon looked at bandaged hand, at shards of obsidian and crystal. He'd faced death, brokered alliance, cracked crown of night, yet war beyond wall only begun. Summer kings still fought, dragons maybe hatched, realm fracturing. Winter had blinked but not yielded. He closed eyes, exhausted, but hopeful. 5 hours? 5 lifetimes. The tale stretched still, unwinding like ghost white road to south and beyond. He felt Ghost's warm press and Val's hand on cloth. He would walk again soon. Many paths ahead. Rebuild the watch, parley lords. Free Skagos mines. Perhaps sail south with dragonglass for Dragon Queen rumored across narrow sea. But for a heartbeat he allowed stillness. Snow fell outside. Lazy flakes twirling in sunlight. The gentlest face of winter, fragile as peace. And Jon Snow, king by accident, warrior by necessity, dreamed not of throne or song, but of quiet hearth where children carved whistles, where giants laughed with men, where direwolves slept by fireside unfearing of night. He dreamed, and in that dream hope breathed.